Have you ever felt like you're drowning in information? Like you've got all these puzzle pieces, but you just can't seem to put them together.
Yeah, totally. You're surrounded by all this knowledge, but you're still missing that crucial insight.
Right. That's what we're tackling today. We're going deep on something that's often overlooked, the difference between being a technical whiz and a truly effective leader.
It's a gap that can really hold people back.
It definitely can. And for this deep dive, we're looking at insights from Arkaro. They're a consultancy, and they've got this really interesting focus, making science profitable.
I like that. Very catchy.
Right. And their work shows something really important. Just because someone's great technically doesn't mean they automatically know how to lead a team or an entire organization.
It's like a blind spot. You can be brilliant in your field, but still struggle when it comes to leadership.
Exactly. And Arkaro really digs into this in their piece, The Hidden Leadership Gap, Why Technical Excellence Isn't Enough. They've noticed this pattern. Companies often promote people based on their technical skills.
Which makes sense on the surface.
It does. But it can actually create a leadership vacuum.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you've got people in charge who might not have the skills to actually lead. Mark Blackwell, Arkaro's founder, calls these missing skills blind spots.
So these are the non-technical skills that are essential for leadership but often get overlooked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, how many talented people out there are hitting a ceiling simply because they haven't developed these leadership skills?
It's probably more common than we realize. And what's interesting is the disconnect Arkaro highlights between how organizations approach technical development versus leadership development.
Oh yeah, there's a big difference there.
For sure. Companies invest a ton in training their technical people, in optimizing processes, all the hard skills. But when it comes to developing leadership, the skills you need to guide those technical teams well, it doesn't get the same attention.
It's like we assume that leadership skills magically appear when someone gets promoted.
Yeah, like it's an automatic upgrade, but it doesn't work that way.
It definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like expecting someone who writes amazing code to suddenly know how to motivate a team just because they have a new title.
Right. And as Garrett Forsythe, a consultant at Arkaro, points out, a lot of technical education paths focus so much on those hard skills that they miss those crucial liberal arts skills.
You mean like communication and things like that?
Exactly. Communication, psychology, even writing. These aren't just nice to haves, they're essential for good leadership.
Because leading people is about more than just technical knowledge. It's about understanding how to connect with them and inspire them.
Absolutely. And that's where Arkaro talks about the technical success trap. People get promoted based on their technical achievement.
Which is how it should be, to a certain extent.
Right. But then they end up in these leadership positions, responsible for teams and strategy, but they lack those core leadership skills. And what's even trickier is that, as Forsythe says, these leaders might not even realize they're missing these skills. There's no framework for them to see it.
So it's like an invisible barrier holding them back. Okay, so let's get specific. What exactly are these essential leadership skills that Arkaro talks about?
Well, they highlight several key areas. One of the big ones is understanding different personalities.
Because not everyone thinks the same way.
Right. And effective leaders recognize these differences and know how to use them.
So it's not just about accepting that people are different. It's about actually leveraging those differences.
Exactly. It's about creating synergy.
I like that. What else is on their list?
Another big one is identifying and maximizing individual and team strengths. So it's about recognizing the potential in people and creating an environment where they can thrive.
That makes sense. And it sounds a lot like coaching, actually.
It does. Then there's emotional intelligence, being able to manage your own emotions, but also understand and influence the emotions of others.
Emotional intelligence, that's often seen as a soft skill, but it sounds like Arkaro sees it as pretty crucial.
Absolutely. Especially in those high-pressure technical environments, it can make all the difference.
Between a team that's cohesive and productive versus one that's constantly clashing.
Exactly. And that leads into another important skill, navigating conflict productively.
Because, let's be honest, conflict is going to happen.
It is, especially when you're dealing with complex technical issues.
People are going to have different opinions, different approaches.
Right. A strong leader doesn't shy away from conflict. They actually use it as an opportunity for growth and innovation.
So it's about facilitating constructive dialogue.
Exactly. And part of that is being able to have those difficult conversations, giving honest feedback, addressing performance issues, things a lot of technical leaders find uncomfortable.
It can be tough, but it's necessary.
It is, for both the individual and the team to grow. Then there's the ability to communicate complex ideas clearly.
Especially in a technical field where you're dealing with concepts that not everyone understands.
Right. Arkaro talks about the importance of storytelling, being
Yeah.
able to translate that technical knowledge into a compelling narrative.
Because a good story can make even the most complex ideas relatable and engaging.
Exactly. Whether you're explaining something to a business team or pitching an idea to investors, storytelling is key.
So you need those communication skills to bridge the gap between the technical world and the rest of the world.
You do. And finally, creating psychological safety.
What does that mean exactly?
It means fostering an environment where people feel safe to take risks, to voice different opinions, to admit when they've made a mistake without fear of being punished.
It's basically creating a culture of trust and openness.
Exactly. And that's essential for creativity and innovation.
It makes sense. If people are afraid to speak up or try new things, progress is going to be stifled.
It's amazing how all these so-called soft skills actually have a huge impact on business results.
They do, and there's actually a ton of research that backs this up. The data shows a clear link between these leadership skills and things like professional success, team performance, and even a company's profitability.
So it's not just a feel-good thing, it's about real, tangible outcomes.
So how does Arkaro approach this whole challenge?
Well, they have this do-it-with-you philosophy.
Which sounds very hands-on.
It is. They have 4 main principles. First, their approach is practical and relevant to the real-world issues leaders are facing.
So no abstract theories.
Right. Second, it's personalized. They recognize that every leader and every organization has different needs. Third, it's not a one-time training. It's sustained development.
So they're in it for the long haul.
They are. And finally, it's measurable. They focus on changes in behavior and actual improvements in the organization.
So it's about making a real difference. How does this do-it-with-you thing actually work?
Well, they start by helping leaders identify those blind spots we talked about earlier. They use assessments and feedback to pinpoint areas for development.
Okay, so they're helping leaders become aware of their own weaknesses.
Exactly. But they don't just leave it there. They actually work side by side with leaders to help them develop these skills.
So it's like having a coach in the trenches with you.
Exactly, and it's all done within the context of their everyday work.
So they're learning by doing.
Exactly. It seems like they view leadership development as a crucial part of how an organization grows, not just some separate HR thing.
Like it's woven into the fabric of the organization.
Yes, and Arkaro emphasizes that this kind of investment in leadership has a ripple effect.
Meaning what?
Well, it can lead to better collaboration between teams, more effective execution of strategy, happier and more engaged employees, and a more agile organization that can adapt to changes.
Wow, so the benefits are pretty far-reaching.
They are. It's really about transforming the organization from the inside out.
And I love this quote from Mark Blackwell, "We don't just coach, we get on the pitch with you." It really captures that sense of partnership.
It does. It's about creating lasting improvements that become part of how the organization operates.
So to our listener, if you're seeing your organization struggle with things like strategy, collaboration, or adapting to change, maybe take a moment to think about whether this hidden gap in leadership skills could be a factor.
It's definitely worth considering, and it sounds like Arkaro might be a really valuable resource for organizations that are facing those challenges.
They do seem to have a unique approach. So let's talk a bit more about Arkaro. What exactly do they do?
They're a B2B consultancy. They specialize in a few key areas like strategy, innovation processes, product management, commercial excellence and business development, and integrated business management.
So they cover a lot of ground.
They do, and they have a lot of experience in the agriculture, food, and chemicals industries.
So they have a deep understanding of those sectors.
Right, and what sets them apart is their combination of real-world business experience and formal consultancy training. They can offer solutions that are both practical and effective.
And as we talked about, that do-it-with-you approach is really central to their philosophy.
It is. They're not just delivering reports and walking away. They're working with you to create solutions that are sustainable and create real value.
It's about empowering the organization to succeed on its own. And that get on the pitch with you thing really highlights their commitment to being hands-on and driving real results.
It does.
So if any of our listeners are interested in learning more about Arkaro and how they could potentially help their organization, what's the best way to reach them?
The best way is to reach out to them directly. They're very open to connecting with people and discussing their approach. You can find all their information on their website, www.arkaro.com.
Great. And they're also active on LinkedIn.
They are. Just search for Arkaro on LinkedIn, and you can follow their updates and connect with them there.
Awesome. So for our listeners, if this deep dive has made you think about the balance between technical skills and leadership skills in your own world, Arkaro seems like a great resource to check out.
I agree. This whole conversation really underscores something important. Technical knowledge is important. It's a foundation. But it's those human-centered leadership skills that can really unlock the potential of an organization and make it truly successful.
It makes you wonder, are we paying enough attention to both sides of the equation, the technical and the human?
It's a great question to think about.
It is. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some food for thought and maybe even inspired you to take action.
It's been great discussing this. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.